Welcome back. We are in election season, and ahead of the primaries, we're talking with people who are running for your vote, and that includes today Spanky Edwards. He is wanting your vote for the 17th Congressional District within Illinois. Thank you so much for being here, Spanky.
Thank you, Eugene. I appreciate you for having me on your show.
Now, to start off in clarifying, you were from the the election board, you were taken off the ballot, but you are fighting to get write-in votes at this point, but you're also considering taking other actions. What is that?
Yes, so unfortunately, my opponent was able to get me removed from the ballot. Nevertheless, we'll be on the ballot as a write-in candidate in all of the 14 counties in the district, and we're currently in the process of suing to get back on the ballot because we've had at least 833 people in the district to sign our petition. I can see if there was a fraud or signing other people's names on the petitions, but that's not the case. 833 people who have voted before signed my petition, so therefore I should be on the ballot.
Now, just for clarity there, you said that your opponent got you off the ballot, but the reason why the ballot also said why your name was removed was because of addresses that they said did not match, correct?
Yeah, so the unfortunate reality about people who are experiencing poverty is that we move all the time. Even my address, I'm not registered at my current address because I just recently moved. So when you are renting, it's only 30% of the people within the whole 17th district that own their house. So we have a high mobility rate. So people don't register to vote every time that they move. People don't participate in the electoral process that often. So it doesn't make sense for a person who moved in another place within the same district to have their name not count on a petition when they can register to vote all the way up until election day. That is voter suppression, and is not only is it that, but it's classism as well. It's rich people making the rules, making it more difficult for poor and disenfranchised people to participate and select their own representation. That is taxation without representation.
All right, you're from Peoria?
Born and raised.
Born and raised in Peoria. Can you kind of tell people a little bit more about yourself who may not be familiar with you?
Yes, I'm born and raised in Peoria. I went to born on the South End, raised in the East Bluff. Missouri Block is where I'm from. So I went to Glen Oak Primary School. Shout out to the Mighty Oaks. White Middle School, and Peoria High School. Now, my freshman year, I was a water boy, the manager for my freshman year for the championship team, which was Sean Livingston, Brandon Lee, and all those great persons who also played on our. So they are my brothers, and many of them are going to help me in this election as well. So
for your campaign, you're moving forward. Obviously, again, you said that you're from Peoria. Peoria is very near and dear to your heart here. What are some of the things that you think you can bring to the table when it comes to particularly an area where the last several years we've looked at the discrepancies between people of color within this community? I know you have some ideas there. What are some of the ideas that you have to kind of combat that issue that the city's really been talking about for the last several years?
They've been talking about it. Many of them have been actually working, but at a snail's pace, in my opinion. So some of the things that we have, as an educator myself, I worked in Peoria Public Schools, I worked in Atlanta as well. So one thing that we're going to be able to do is what we're calling moral reconstruction, along with the Poor People's Campaign, and William Barber also is pushing this moral reconstruction. So it's not the fact that people are not working hard, it's that they're working really hard, but they're working 2 and 3 jobs and they can't raise their children. So I think that is very immoral, considering that it's also what Martin Luther King's talked about people living on an impoverished island in a vast ocean of so much material wealth. So our moral reconstruction consists of 3 things. It is economic reconstruction, an education reconstruction, and an environmental reconstruction. So we support things like, if you are a public servant, if you are a teacher, a police officer, a fireman, a nurse, if you are providing those type of essential services that we cannot live without you, in the media as well. Eugene, I think you should be making $100,000, at least starting off $100,000, because you are providing that sort of value to our community, not $30,000 and $40,000, and so you can't raise a family on that. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing as far as the economy is concerned. One thing that works in Peoria is when Peoria's had the greatest economy, many in the country, we rival when we were the whiskey capital of the world. So what I want to do is to expand crop insurance for farmers. So they can't, so right now the federal government only covers soybeans and corn. What if we expanded that to wheat and marijuana and other things? So that way we can have more revenue in and paying people more money. We can put distilleries back in Peoria, but not only in Peoria. We can put distilleries and weed dispensaries and farms, crops, so they can grow them in Peoria, Rockford, Galesburg, and Rock Island. Those are creating those types of 100,000 job opportunities, and the tax that goes from them will come and be sent into coffers to be able to pay teachers more what they deserve, firemen what they deserve, nurses what they deserve. So that's what, and also I support the Green New Deal as well. So that handles, the catastrophe that we are facing in our environment. But additionally to that, I want to spend $1 billion extra to clean the Illinois River as well as the Mississippi River as well, because it's disgusting if you go down there. The water's brown. It's all types of things that should not be in a river that is in there. So I want to spend an extra $1 billion a year to make sure that the water and the pipelines are clear of lead and other poisons that's in the Illinois and the Mississippi River.
$1 billion each year to do
Absolutely.
Those things just for those waterways.
Yes.
Okay. Back to your $100,000 a year. You had the ideas that you talked about for agriculture. But what about other industries within, like in our area here in central Illinois? Like, how would you manage to, say larger companies, Caterpillar or school districts, et cetera, that they would be able to pay $100,000 for all of their employees? So
I think that, again, there's two-tier companies. There are the Caterpillar type of companies who do have the money to pay. Caterpillar is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They have the money to pay their employees, even the factory workers who work harder. My parents, both of them worked at Caterpillar. And in the factory, my brother also works at Caterpillar right now. He's getting ready to move to Atlanta because of how Caterpillar treats their employees. It's so fluctuates, so it's not dependable as it once was. So those companies, the Fortune 500 companies that can afford to pay them, will demand that they pay their employees. Those are the Walmarts and McDonald's. Will demand that they pay their employees a living wage. The companies that are the mom and pop stores who cannot afford them, then we'll provide, again, I will introduce a bill to reinstate the Freedmen's Bureau, and that's hiring retired military veterans as well as MBAs to work on the local level to get these businesses up to where they need to be. So again, the Freedmen's Bureau happened after the Civil War when they helped slaves adapt to freedom. So they built hospitals, that's where the 40 acres and a mule came from, so they helped them adapt to freedom. The new Freedmen's Bureau in its third Reconstruction, we will help to adapt the economy, to evolve it, to create these $100,000 opportunities to move more people from the lower class to the middle class.
And then how would you distinguish which, and last question on this topic, but how would you distinguish which companies could and could not pay? I'm sure there's a lot of companies who will try to argue, or businesses that will try to argue, I can't pay my employees that much.
They can try. So it's not a minimum wage that we're shooting for. It is a middle class wage that we're shooting for. So if you can do that, then I wouldn't mind giving companies tax breaks who pay their employees at least $75,000, you know? I wouldn't mind doing that, but we have companies that are making billions of dollars, almost trillion-dollar companies that are paying nothing in tax, and they're paying their employees starvation wages. In 2020, we cannot allow that type of stuff to happen. That is an immoral crisis. So when we talk about the moral reconstruction, those companies, we're coming for you. You have to pay your fair share in taxes so that the roads and infrastructure can be paid for, teachers, all those different types of things. You have to pay your fair share in that. And again, Amazon's going to be fine if they're taxed. Microsoft, Apple, all those companies will be fine if we tax them the proper amount or a fair tax for them. They can survive that. They're billionaires.
All right, so I have just two more questions for you within the time that we have here. The first is simply, do you have a presidential candidate that you support at this point?
Absolutely. There are a few that are aligned with what I feel like we need here, but of course, you know, as a progressive Democrat, and this is Lane Evans' seat, who was one of the originators, progressive caucus professional congressional caucus members. So it was Lane Evans and Bernie Sanders and John Conyers, Maxine Waters, those types of people. So I support progressive Democrats like Bernie Sanders as well as Elizabeth Warren, those type of candidates currently.
All right, and so last for you, this would be a first when it comes to being in office in this regard. Why should people vote for you, particularly? I mean, obviously we're not just talking about Peoria, we're talking about a much larger area, even up to Rock Island. Why should people vote for Spanky Edwards, or in this case, place your name in for a write-in to represent them within the 17th district?
So yes, so actually I served as the president of the Peoria's Youth Advisory Commission, the commission that when I was in high school, so I probably was one of the youngest commissioners in the city. So so in 2020, why you should vote for me and as opposed to my opponent is, the number one reason is I am not afraid of Medicare for all. I think Medicare for all is an essential service. I think it is a human right. You deserve it. If we can afford it, we need it. My opponent has stated on several occasions that she is scared of Medicare for all. So we don't need that type of moral cowardice or afraid to stand up for people whom are sick. So if you are making less than $200,000, I'm going to be your best candidate, because it takes that amount of money to live a middle-class life in America. So if you are struggling, if you're working 3 jobs, if you're living in poverty, if you live on Section 8, have a link card, all those types of things, if you are a struggling teacher, many of my colleagues and educators work 3 jobs to afford lifestyles. That should not be. You're not going to find a candidate that's going to go to bat for you in Rockford and in Galesburg and Rock Island and even the farms. Illinois has lost about a dozen farmers have lost their land in Illinois. Hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing away from Illinois. So I'm here, I came back to Peoria to help and to lift my people up. Again, this district is the 3rd worst district out of the 435 districts in the entire country. The 17th district is the worst for black people, and it's not doing too much better for white poor people either. So if you are experiencing poverty, if you're just not making ends meet, I am going to go to Washington, D.C., and with not just myself, but a whole bunch of organizers who committed their lives, many of them living in poverty as well, intentionally to do this type of work. Those are the type of people that I'm going to associate myself with. So my work with the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that Dr. King founded himself, my work with the Democratic Party, my work with Jahan Gordon. Jahan Gordon is one of her first volunteers. Many times it was just me and her knocking on the doors back in '08 when she was going to challenge Aaron Schock. So I believe in that type. That's the type of Democrat I am, the type of Jahan Gordon Democrat.